Sorry, man. It's gonna save my life. You know how to go back to that. There's two videos that we can
Hello everyone. We're going to start in 10 minutes. So please, well we are, 7:30? Is that 10 minutes? We're starting at 7:30 and get your drinks. Can you all hear me? Great. Jans, do you want to say something?
Hello, good evening. My name's Jons, and thank you very much for coming along to this event. It's a first to a certain degree because we have Arthur here, who's not only from my old college, which I haven't quite told you yet, but I believe he is the first non-US based temple designer, and that is a major, major coup for us, and it's an absolute delight to have him here. We also are celebrating the second print run of NK Guy's book, which Tashin have been, putting this thing together is a labour of love to a certain degree. And I sat with Neil through most of it over the years, coming back to the desert, dyeing his hair over and over and over again, and sticking cameras in the temple, sticking cameras on the man. But it's an amazing project, and I take it we have a copy here. Thank you. This is 16 years in the making. I think we were in the desert for the first time the same year in '98. And yes, indeed. And it's great. I mean, as the event itself clocks up more years, it's nice to see a lot of representation from this side of the pond, and you guys being here is a testament to that. Not going to witter on a lot. We have drinks over there that have been generously, I know this isn't a commercial thing, but generously donated by a fellow burner, Henry Chevalier, who runs Aspel. All the money for the drinks are going towards the temple. all the money for the prints are going towards the temple. At some point, we'll have a card reader, so the money will be going straight into your account. I think we're going to, cough in or click in a bit for the hire of the venue, which Ed has generously given to us at a very discounted rate. So, without further ado, Neil, come on. Oh, there you go. First, I just wondered whether you're still the Arthur. Yes, please.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. It is time.
It is time. Thank you so much, Yoms and Nick. It's really just such an honor. I don't think I've ever spoken to such a full room. So it was, this project is probably the biggest challenge that I've ever faced. A very, very humbling and beautiful challenge, which is the challenge of a big community. So I can feel the weight, but also the support of this community. So to all of you, thank you for that. And I'd like to take you through that journey, the journey of Galaxia and where we come from and how this happened. How can suddenly, someone from London gets a temple to design at Burning Man? Who am I and who are we? There's some colleagues with me here. We have an architecture studio in East London called Mamumani, and we have a Fab Lab where everyone else can come and fabricate whatever they want, whatever their dreams are. We do open source software for 3D printing, and I also teach at the University of Westminster. And so throughout the years, I've worked on many projects with machines. This is probably one of the reasons we were chosen. The theme this year is iRobot, and we've been working with machines. And when I say with them, it means understanding them. But it's been about maybe 5 years that we started the journey. And it's very unusual for an architect to do that sort of stuff, pop-ups. And I think often we are a bit about permanence and permanent buildings, and we see these buildings as something that won't last and therefore won't have the sort of value that these guys have, But for me, it's a very different world now. We are all at home looking at our computers, and so we need reasons to go out. And temporary pop-ups, display, working with people's dreams, making sure that a space can only happen in the flick of a moment, I believe is something that every architect should consider. We do really strange things because once you start working with machines can build buildings, but they can also do other stuff, such as printing food, for example. This is probably one of the strangest projects we worked on, Food Inc. But we're also the makers of our own projects. This is in South London, so Burning Man is our inspiration, but we use the idea of making our own things throughout our architectural practice. Large-scale projects that grow from parameters. I'm going to say this word quite often, parameters, parametric design. Some of you might have heard that term. We are in a new world of kind of open source tools that we're all using, and this is the kind of tools that the community share. That's how I met a lot of members of our team this year, because they would write software, share it, and then we would do stuff from it. That's the MakerMount, which is a bit further towards Hackney Road, where all the maker spaces are. That means that we share files and we produce physical objects together. And that's extremely important in the story of, say, Galaxia and Burning Man in general. Aaron Pornfield, who's the US lead of the project, I met him through that, the Instructables. He was sharing that file, the kind of way to bend wood. You'll probably see a version of the project that evolved. So through learning, we got to know each other, and I was just so grateful that I then shared again the file with him and so on and so forth, and then he came to Burning Man with me. So We Want to Learn is the blog on which we share all our kind of research with the students, and so I'm very keen to make this beyond just Burning Man in a way, to show you that the reason that we're probably doing it this year is out of this sort of learning curve that has been the journey with the students. This is also a new sort of paradigm within architecture, which is we have access to crowdfunding and to all of you. So all our ventures, we don't necessarily need to wait for a client to impose a kind of brief or so on. We can also create our own projects and then hope that you guys like it and hope that you will give. Hence the Izetol, Sandy is there and we'll show you several things. So I'd like to take you through Galaxia. When I started a long time ago in middle school, that's how we were taught computer science. Does anyone know this tool? It's the turtle logo. You were to put kind of indication to the turtle, telling the turtle to move through space, and it would create little kind of drawings. And then I would stay at school after hours doing all these patterns, because in a way I wasn't drawing them, I was drawing the rules behind them. And therefore I was amazed by what the computer did from just a series of indications. A bit later, I'm doing a little jump in the career, but Virgin Galactic asked us to do the hotel for the astronauts. Astronauts as in space tourists. And I thought, well, let's get the turtle out. And and so this was a long time ago. This was about 4 years ago, before I even went to Burning Man. And then the turtle, or the vectors, the lines, I'm not going to be too geeky, but they move around the space. And so you ask a line to move and to rotate, to move and to rotate. And you do it on and on and on. And that's how you create these recursive forms. And they look extremely natural, and they can be guided. So you can grow them according to the sunlight, for example. You could say grow towards a certain kind of sun ray, meaning you can let sun in when it's cold, and you can block sun when it's hot. So this was the astronaut hotel, which I, was was in the middle of a desert, not Black Rock, but I always thought it'd be interesting to kind of adapt it to the playa, because in a way it's also a desert. But through that, this was 4 years ago, so a lot of things have happened since. One of them is this. I started getting my first machines, and I started doing turtling with the machine. So this is showing you how a 3D printer can print in midair. Now, okay, getting a little bit geeky, but every one of those lines is the turtle that you send to the machine. So you can see I'm sending information, and the machine moves around just like the turtle was doing in the logo example that I was doing. So I'll pass you on how we do it. But what happens is you then get the sort of crafted ornaments that a 3D printer wants to have, in a way. You move the parameters, you go faster, slower, and then you get a language that is kind of part of that machine, a language that is developed in relationship with it. The other amazing thing about this new age is that you can send the machines themselves. You don't have to send the actual thing. And that's a revolution, because we used to kind of send materials around, not the machines that produce these pieces. So we're going to do the same. We're going to send probably one of the largest 3D printers to Reno, and we're going to start printing these teardrops. So this is further examples. This sort of mandala geometry is what you'll have in the middle of the Galaxia, as you kind of meditate around the centerpiece of the project. And this language is, I hope, going to inspire people. And yeah, I'll speak more about Galaxia itself, but I'd like to then tell you a bit about my students. One of them is here around, probably a few of them here, and they're scattered around. It's been 6 years that me and Toby Burgess are teaching We Want to Learn. So our motto is, tell me I forget, teach me and I may remember, but involve me and I will learn. What we mean by that is obviously we have to do things, we have to fail, we have to create on and fail again in order to learn. So we brought the students to the playa and we wanted them to learn a few things from it. So why would you teach Burning Man to students? Well, because there are a few values that we think are important to realize. One is that we're all actors. We're all involved in what we're doing. We're not waiting for someone to come and kind of give us a project. We're not waiting for someone to hold us by the hand and kind of tell us what to do. We all need to feel empowered and go out there and create things. And that's self-reliance. And for me, that's the most beautiful value of Burning Man, because I don't like to kind of not be the, let's say, the master of my destiny. And I think for architects, it's especially more true because it's really hard as a job. And when I wanted to be an architect, everyone said, "Oh, you're going to be unemployed. Don't worry." I didn't want that, and I knew that I would have to fight for it. And Burning Man gives you that sort of drive. Communal effort. No project happens by yourself. It's a myth saying this project by Zaha Hadid, this project. It's not true. There is a whole team of people. It's a huge venture. To do a project is a huge venture. You need to learn to work with people, and there's nothing kind of more intense than working in the desert under 50 degrees with people around you. You have to find the food and all that. So it's an architectural bootcamp for us. So these are probably the most important one. And of course, people know Burning Man as the burning of the men. But I kind of think there's way more to it. And I'm sure you guys all agree because you're part of the community. Buckminster Fuller is let's say, a big hero, and he's influenced a lot the Burning Man community. Obviously, you know him through the Geodesic Dome, but we also know him through the operating manual of Spaceship Earth. He kind of was a polymath. So he wasn't an architect, an engineer, a scientist, a writer, a philosopher. He was all of it. And this is extremely inspiring in the case of Burning Man. There is the fun, the crazy structures, the beauty of those incredible creative structures. And there's the boring side of Burning Man, I would say, as in the less exciting, but that excites us, which is how do you get a kind of hexagon up? How do you get rid of the gray water, the black water, this sort of logistical questions that come with building in the desert, with being in the desert. And I think that's, here he is, Joe. I don't know if it's gonna kind of go up, but this is how it's supposed to look. This is Joe. He's here. He's part of the team. He's one of our students, and he was working on a reinterpretation of that geodesic dome using a reciprocal structure. So what does that mean? It means that he only has one little module that he repeats in an array, and then they kind of butt against each other, and then they stay in position thanks to that reciprocal nature. Now this is really mad. Sorry, Joe. As your teacher officially. But there's no way, I think, that one can come up with things like this if you think in a top-down fashion. If you think in advance, what am I going to design? You have to kind of let the material do its thing. You have to let the logistical questions do their thing. And that pragmatism is what leads to the most unexpected design, in a way to the most magical designs. So this is the very first year we went, and this is when we brought two students. These are two projects from two of our students, Shipwreck and Fractal Cult. And when we really started learning the constraints of building in the desert. Again, sending the files to the machines instead of sending the objects themselves, and getting everything received as a sort of giant IKEA puzzle to be built by architects and non-architects. Now that's when you notice that you're missing most of the pieces, that you're 3 hours away from Reno, 6 hours away from Sacramento, that you're sitting there and like we're running out of water. This was not only our first time, but it was also all our students' first time. And we're stuck here in the middle of the dust, trying to figure out how on earth are we going to finish that. I mean, you never finish. We might not finish the temple, I say it. You know. But you won't even notice, probably. So this is Shipwreck. It was our first puzzle. There was a few more after that. You probably remember the Infinity Tree, Bismuth's Bivouac. This is the story of two different projects. One that drove us mad, and one that was so smooth that it drove us mad as well. So these are the kind of numbers we had to face, the kind of puzzle we had to resolve. It's almost like the puzzle got more and more intense. And you can see that all of these pieces, you might not see it, but they didn't have a number on them. So we had to find which one. I know. Maya there, she was like trying to figure out which one is where. And on the other side, you had this nicely, neatly stacked kind of thing that went there smoothly. As we were building with way too many scaffolds, trying to figure out which piece, they were just like, oh, da, 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 you know? And yeah, and they were done, and we were still working, and everyone was coming to see us. Hey, thank you for your art. And we're like, ah. We didn't finish it. No, I mean, I don't know if people noticed if it wasn't finished. The truth is we learned so much. And you could think of these two projects that I showed, and you can think of this one as the baby of those two projects. Because it had the curvature of the Infinity Tree, but it had the simplicity of Bismuth Bivouac. So it was made of 2x4 timber. Now we know very well that off-the-shelf timber comes in certain sizes. And that we shouldn't be using laser cutter and stuff like this. And then we just formed this kind of reciprocal structure cut simply with a circular saw, a matrix of numbers coming from the computer, and the most amazing carpenter in the world, Draw. So this is Maya again, and Lola assembling a structure that is highly symmetrical. That's another lesson. With our Draw, kind of assembling things in layers, as you do with a 3D printer. Now, this piece had a lot of kind of people wanting to come. They were writing things on each one of those tangents, and it would shine at night the colors of joy, and it really, really brought a lot of, let's say, release in a way. People were writing, and we were stenciling people's words, people's dreams, and we burned it. We burnt it, and it was a beautiful burn, as it was kind of designed to burn, and so is this one. And so that's where we start talking about the project. Galaxia has been designed in a similar fashion to Tangential Dream in that it's made of off-the-shelf timber. They rotate, they are highly symmetrical, and I cannot really speak about Galaxia before speaking about the temple. So, when I first went to Burning Man, this is where the temple was. Very, very far. So you get to know it, when it's your first time, you get to know the temple quite late throughout the event. I don't know if it's the same case for you. And then you enter that space where you start seeing pictures of people, and then you start seeing people crying, and then you suddenly realize that everyone around you is crying, and then you're fully overwhelmed, and that's when you start crying. And I think I've never, ever had that feeling before. Howard, also part of the team, is going to transition to that. And I think that sense of release where you feel connected with other people is something that's extremely spiritual. And, I didn't talk about this guiding principle called radical inclusion. But that's kind of what I felt. I come from a mixed background, Jewish and Catholic. I never really had a religion. And I feel that that's the first time there was a spiritual place where I didn't need to be neither or. I was just myself, and they were just people, and they felt the same way as I felt. And that's why I was very, very keen to somehow offer my art to that temple. So this is Galaxia, and it's very big. This is 60 meters wide, 200 feet, and it's about 20 meters high. It's got benches all around where you can kind of drop your bikes and come in peace, and it's got doors everywhere. Every single place in Galaxia is a door. So there is no north, south, west, east. There is no central doorway. There is no main access. Everything is an access. Howard. It's wonderful. This is the one on YouTube. So something we noticed, because at first it was a kind of project that came from that turtle 4 years ago, is that actually the turtle had some rules we ignored. This is the different like kind of steps, geometrical step behind Galaxia. So it starts with a point. Maybe we can play it from the start, and I can show you that point. So a point, a circle, lots of points, lots of circles. And then we take the intersections of these circles. That creates a petal. And the petals are then populated with further points, which are then the points that we use to go up in the sky. So as you enter through this door that is human-sized, it goes and slowly elevates itself to sort of go with your feelings, go with your emotions, whilst it disappears and goes up to the sky. So, going back to, it's almost there. Thank you. So, at night, Galaxia reveals, whoa, sorry, here we go. Galaxia has all these different petals, and at first they weren't attached. And this is, again, taking you back to the geeky side. But as soon as we started, so when we didn't attach them, they were kind of floating in the air. The whole structure, and the engineer format called us and say, guys, we have a problem. The whole structure was collapsing by about 3 meters under its own self-weight. It acted like a screw that wanted to kind of fall down like that. So that was worrying. As soon as we attached it like this, the self-weight was actually not so much. I think it was about 70 centimeters. And then we added these tangents for people to write. It's missing the ones on the wall, and also to filter the light into a dappled light. The movement is created by these trusses that skew themselves as they go up the petals. Those are attached with some wooden wedges, which are then varying. So this is what we received about 2 days ago from the engineer. It's a color code that says where the timber has to be thicker or thinner. They're telling us exactly from their computer what we need to do in terms of the orders of timber. We're trying to optimize it to use as little timber as possible. So it's very important for us. Obviously, we're aware that we're burning that structure, and we want to kind of prevent as many kind of cutting of trees as possible. This is the centerpiece of Burning Man, of the temple. It's made with silkworm. It's a teardrop representing all our tears as we enter the temple. And they will be stacked into a sort of giant tear that unites all our tears. I can't kind of speak about this project without showing this. This is called Slack. I don't know if you know about it. It's got all these channels, and it's got all these people, and it's happening from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's in London, and then it goes again, San Francisco. The sun never sets on Galaxia. And so, yeah, I'll leave it to the team, because that's the most important part of this project. It's the team effort, it's the common journey, the communal effort. So from working with
carpenters and learning about the craft, the kind of ancestral craft, which honestly I often have no idea about, and you know, the computers will never ever tell you as much as what a carpenter would tell you. These are all the teams, including some students of ours, some professionals, some building-related people, some non-building-related people. So it's all a very joyful and kind of, here we go, I thank him. So thank you very much. We're still, it's gonna go on the loop. We're still looking for people. We're only 51, I think. We are very happy to have you register on the Facebook group, Galaxia, the Facebook page, Temple 2018. Please help us with the fundraising on Click and Pledge and so on. This project is for you. It's by kind of you, in a way. It's for the community, and it will reach out to everyone. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thanks everyone for coming out. This is just amazing. I never thought we'd have this many people. But we did have some technical difficulties this evening, one of which is the streaming link is not the right link, so I'm afraid that that's not working for those people who are out there in cyberspace. So the idea now was to have a bit of a break, an opportunity to check out the stuff that we have on auction, because this is a very expensive project, right? Galaxia is not as expensive in terms of all the labor and the love that it's going to go into it to make it happen, but also the real life costs. And if there's anything that you can donate to help make that happen, that'd be fantastic. And we have a number of my photographs over there, and a bunch of really cool 3D printed and laser cut and handcrafted pieces that Arthur has bought as well. So if you could have a look at that, it's a silent auction. So the idea is you write what you'd like to bid on the little card next to each thing, and then at the end of the evening we'll be able to see who won, as it were. And I'd be happy to sign any prints and any books as well at the end of the evening. There's some for sale over on that side. And as for the drinks, I'm afraid we do ask please for donation if we can, because there's a bunch of expenses associated with doing this gig as well as doing the temple. So yeah, check us back in a few minutes, please.
Yeah, there it is. Yes. What is it going to be about? Neil's going to be introducing a whole load of his bits. And then we've got
Hi. Hello. Excuse me. Do you work or are you like involved in organization? No, I'm just like helping with the person. Do you know who it is? What you like? Who's the guy who was speaking like just that? Oh, the actor from the Valencia. Yeah. Where is he? He's just over there speaking to someone. I don't know. Is the guy like? Yeah, just over there in the corner with the striky kind of. Thank you.
Hi guys, can I just say NK Guy is going to be coming up in a matter of moments to introduce a whole lot of stuff from the book. We've also got the auction and a few other things for you, so we're not even halfway through. Oh, and for those who picked up books, NK Guy is also going to be doing book signings. So please hang around.
How's it going?
Oh, not good actually. The link, the first link didn't work, so we had to have another link, and now not everyone knows it, so not so much the audience.
Well, these things happen.
I know Gary Snyder. Are you out? Yes. Drop me a line. If I'm on the way, I'll be immediate. Yeah. I know. Okay. The streaming. Sam can help work it out, whatever the problem is.
We need to work with this. We need to work with the slideshow first.
You need to,
if that's your priority.
No. Neil has gone away with his computer to do the slideshow, so I don't know where he is. That's the problem.
Let's see. Let's talk about this.
I know he's under a bit of pressure, and he's taken himself out of the loop.
So, what's going on?
So there was I think Neil set up a link, but when we start streaming, it kind of created another link, and there was streaming.
What are you using?
OBS.
One final thing, the silent auction, we are taking cards. It is not cash only. The card machine has arrived. So thank you.
And is this a paid?
I don't think it's paid.
So it's probably like a free.
Yeah, it's a free thing.
And it's definitely not working.
It works, it's just that it streams to the different link that's shared previously, like you share the link.
Okay.
And people can expect to watch on that link. But when we started streaming, it started streaming
on a different thing. So can we advertise that?
Yeah, that's what he did, but not everyone.
Not everyone.
Yeah.
I guess the best thing to do is that, because normally when you go to request a link when you go to send a link that will connect to the stream, it's made at random numbers.
Oh, so it's it generates every time a new one?
Pretty much, unless you're doing it from a number you paid.
I'll have a chat with
So you're having streaming and slideshow possible. What's your priority? What I heard was If you need anything at all, like technical support, what is called, right down here.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're ready for the next part of this evening's gala presentation. So if you could have a seat, please. No? Is that any louder? Yeah? Okay, I think we're ready. If everyone could have a seat, please. You want to take over, Jan?
Hi guys, could you kindly take your seats? We're about to kick off the second part of this evening's adventure. Hi guys, can you kindly take seats, please? Yeah. We're about to start the second part of this evening's entertainment. So, thank you very, very much. Thanks a lot for coming back. Just like to tell you a little bit about my involvement with Neil and the book. I went out to Burning Man first in '98, and within a year I joined the media team, and for the past 19 years I have been one of the custodians of the brand, you can call it a brand, the image. Every single photograph taken by a member of the press goes through my team. We're part of the media team. And the way I kind of put it is, before you take that shot, ask for permission. But once you've cleared that hurdle, you then have to pass your project through my department where we go through everything. So, for instance, if you're coming out to shoot what we'd like to call tit and ass, well, that's not going to work. But also, we, from time to time, in the middle of the night, run around the desert in golf carts trying to catch press teams who are shooting, doing photo shoots, fashion shoots by the trash fence, which is a great place to go and take your photographs. We've always maintained that Burning Man should never be a backdrop to anything else other than the event. So my job usually involves sitting across mail from the press all year round. With Neil's book, I think I was one of the first to connect with him on it when he came out. In fact, I met Neil the first year that we did Nowhere. The second year that we did Nowhere. And he and Jennifer drove up to Spain in a red car. I think it was a red car. He came up the hill. Yeah, I remember clearly. Anyhow, so just about every single photograph in the book's been cleared by the team. Just about. And it's very rewarding, you know, to see a project go through and jump through the hoops. And I tell you, there are a lot of hoops. This is a project that I think should have I think a couple of years late. Perhaps.
We deliberately made it a year later.
Ah, okay, yes. And it's nice to see a second print run, because we don't normally see that. In the 19 years plus that I've done Burning Man, just a few have actually reached this point. And even more so, someone from the UK. And coinciding with art from this part of the world as well, it's a year for celebrating. Unfortunately, neither of us are going to be on the desert this year. So, but it's good. We can run things and manage things from here. Anyhow, Neil would like to introduce The Art of Burning Man, his book, and the pictures, and I'm sure there'll be a few stories to tell. So, round of applause for Neil, please.
Once a year, at the close of summer, from the barren clay of the Nevada desert, rises a temporary city. Dust storms and extreme weather, towering art installations on a vast canvas like no other. This is Burning Man. Welcome to the art of burning.
So with that rather deep sepulchral voice, we have a not entirely up-to-date introduction to Art of Burning Man. That was the first edition. This is the second edition now, which is pretty exciting. So who here has been to Burning Man? Whoa! Well, why did you come here? You already know everything you need to know about it. You don't have to come here and let me tell you about Art of Burning Man. Well, this is the Black Rock Desert, right? This is in northern Nevada, and for 51 weeks a year, it looks like this. It's a dry lake bed. So it's just clay, cracked clay. Nothing can live on that, at least on the surface. And it looks like that from the air. You can see that there's all these lines there, because in winter it actually becomes a lake for about a couple of months, like an inch or two deep. But for 1 week, a city appears. And that city is Burning Man, or Black Rock City. And it's not like any other city, partly because it's temporary, right? It only exists for that 1 week. But it's more than that, because it's a city of art. It's a city where people can express themselves in ways that you just couldn't anywhere else. And so you can be wandering around the middle of the most horrendous dust storm, which is like being inside a Hoover after you've done a bunch of plaster work. And then you see this, a vast metal creature. This is a piece called Coilus by Michael Christian. Or you could be cycling around, right? And all of a sudden, you find this pond, little tiny lily pond, made out of LEDs and metal. Or some skeletons. And by day, they just sit there. But at night, you can pull these cords, the whole thing spins, and they become animated, right? Like a 3D zoetrope. That's Peter Hudson's piece. And Jerry Malutz did the Dragonfly. Or maybe tanker trucks. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen tanker trucks mating like dragonflies. But that's exactly what they seem to be doing. These are actual trucks, real lorries that they bought, the artists who made this, and made into a sculpture. Or Rubik's Cube. This is an actual Rubik's Cube game. You couldn't physically rotate it, but you could see it from different points. And one night I was out there, and the guy actually solved it. It's amazing. He walked around with a real Rubik's Cube in his hand, right? And then he'd shout instructions to these people, the 3 pedestals, and each one you push a button and the lights change, representing the colors. And he actually solved it. It's incredible. It took him about an hour. So this is Rubik's Cube. Or maybe they'll be riding around the desert on a phone. It's Howard Davidson's phone. It's actually street legal, this particular one. But it certainly fits in to the desert. But what is Burning Man about? Well, Burning Man started with one of these. It started with a guy, two guys, Jerry James and Larry Harvey, decided to go down to the beach and make a wooden sculpture, which they set on fire. And then the next year they thought, wouldn't it be cool to make a bigger one? And the year after that they thought, hey, let's make an even bigger one. And it just grew and grew. And then in 1990, the Parks Police said, hey guys, you can't be burning a giant wooden figure on the public beach. This is just not cool. So they stopped. And then they took it out to the desert. And then the whole thing just went crazy. And it's been, you know, bigger ever since. A lot of stuff is transient. This is a sculpture that was called Burn Wall Street, and that's the remains of Burn Wall Street. But other stuff isn't. This is actually a piece that's taken down and put back together every year. This is by Rob Bell, and it's made out of flat pieces of wood. So I'm just going to cycle through these very quickly because we're really here to talk about the temple. So Burning Man is about celebration, right? It's about parties. It's about having a good time. It's about going out there with your friends and, you know, having the most incredible experience you've ever had in your life. But it's also more than that. And that's what we're here to talk about today. And that's what Artur is here to talk about, or was here to, he's still here, talked about earlier, was the temple. And that is a completely fascinating aspect to Burning Man. And it started in the year 2000 with an artist called David Best. Now, David specializes in doing found art, right? Assemblage art. He takes things, makes things out of it that you would never expect. And one day, in about 1999, he was going through a factory where they make those wooden dinosaurs. You know those children's dinosaurs that slot together, you know, like this. And he found a whole pile of flat pieces of plywood with no dinosaurs in them, right? Now, if you were like you or me, in other words, not a great artist, you would go, hey, that's cool. Look, that's this pieces of wood with no dinosaurs in them. But David Best, being an incredible artist, said, what if we made a building out of it? Right? So he did. And this, unfortunately, is not a very good picture, but it's the very first Burning Man temple. This is the year 2000. It was called Temple of the Mind. And in North America, houses are typically made out of wood frames, especially in Western North America. And that's all this is. This is a wood frame house with the dinosaur material stuck on the sides. It's like a lattice work of wood, right? And they started painting it, but they ran out of paint, so it was kind of a funny color. Part of it was bare wood, and part of it was sort of maroon. But what made it really interesting was it didn't have a purpose initially, other than just being really cool art. But one evening, a volunteer who was working on the project, a man named Michael Heflin, was coming home from volunteering on the temple and died in a motorcycle crash. He was 33. And all of a sudden, this project became something very different. Because when they set it up in the desert, it was no longer just a wooden building that looked cool. It was a monument to Michael. And David really felt that vibe around the whole thing and encouraged people to add their own expressions of loss to the building. And so when it went up like this, despite the horned helmet in here and all the kind of party vibe, there was a real hush around it. There was a real sense of people have put themselves into this. It wasn't just a piece of art that was being burned. It was a piece of themselves being burned. So the next year, the theme, they have a theme every year at Burning Man, was the 7 Ages of Man, and off the Shakespeare quote. And I'm trying to remember, is it As You Like It? As You Like It? Yes? Yes, okay. The 7 Ages of Man, starting with the baby and going to the schoolboy and the soldier, and so it's very, very sexist, I'm afraid. It doesn't talk about women, but 7 ages of male humanity in this model. But each point on the clock of the Burning Man city was marked with a different theme. So they had a little play area and this and that. And the Burning Man organizers said, hey, let's get David Best to build a mausoleum. That building he did was really cool. So they did. They asked him if he could build a building at the farthest point on this particular set of concentric rings. So he did. This is the 2001 temple. I think it was called Temple of Tears, but the Burning Man organizers refer to it as a mausoleum. As you can see, it uses the same technique. This is all that wooden dinosaur wood, right? But with a much bigger, kind of almost Asian-looking temple structure with these kind of custom piece, kind of like crescent moons coming out. Oops, wrong direction. And the complexity of the work was astounding. I mean, look at that. You know, it's a fisheye lens. It wasn't quite as round as that. So, David is a really amazing guy, and unfortunately my slideshow is now out of sequence. This is the 2004 temple, and it's supposed to be the 2003 temple. He decided to make things even bigger in 2004. This is called the Temple of the Stars, and as you can see, it's really long. It's about 1/4 of a mile long. So the central part was very similar to the 2002 temple, but much taller. But what was interesting about it was it had these ramps. Because one of the key things about the Burning Man temples is that they're inclusive. And I don't mean that in a superficial way. They're genuinely inclusive. Because they become a symbol of loss, a universal experience that we all have, you know, throughout our lives. But there's no dogma associated with it. Because so much of what we do when it comes to funerals and loss and death is governed by very strict cultural traditions. Now that can be wonderful, but it can also be very exclusive. And you've heard these tragic stories about people who can't go to their father's funeral because they're of a different religion or something like that, right? Or people who want to go to a friend's wedding and they're not allowed in, right? With these temples, these buildings become places that anyone can go. There's no rules about who can and cannot enter, as long as you're not a jerk and try to rest it out. It's completely open. And one of the things that he did, David Best, this year, was to make these ramps so that anyone with a wheelchair could go in. There was a little shortcut for wheelchair users, and they could go up and come on this balcony area. Another thing that happened is people started adding their own stuff to it, right? The initial temples, the 2001 temple, they had little wooden blocks, and you could write a little note on these little wooden blocks. But I think a lot of people have a lot more to say than will fit on a tiny little wooden block. And so they started writing on the temple itself and leaving things on the temple itself. And they started making that temple their own. And so when you go to those temples now, it's not just a building. It's become a thing that people invested themselves in. There may be their grandfather's army boots, right? There may be a painting that they did of their mother. There may be a note saying, you know, I'm really angry at you, my lousy brother, for doing whatever. Whatever personal message you have, people can add that. And then when the building is destroyed at the very end, and it always is, it's a mark of transience. It's temporary. And down here, you can just probably see there's a little dark smudge. I was very pleased with this picture when I got it back. That's a cardigan that my grandmother knitted for me. It's the second last cardigan she ever made for me. And it no longer fit, and some moths had eaten it, so I couldn't even, you know. So I put it on the temple. So when I see that, that's my story, right? And everyone has their own. That's the temple under construction, and you can see here the huge scale of it. This is the wheelchair ramp. And this is a wedding that's being performed. This guy was really pissed off at us because we were using a big lift, and the diesel motor was quite noisy. But there's David Best there. He's presiding over the wedding. He becomes a sort of a secular priest. It's quite fascinating to see him on site. So this is going back, I'm afraid. This is chronologically slightly out. This is 2003. This was quite interesting. This was a very interesting architectural experiment. These are cardboard. So you know when you make a bridge or something, you have these cardboard tubes, like enormous toilet roll tubes, and they pour concrete in, and then they peel them off, and you're left with this concrete post. So this entire building is made out of that stuff. And then there's this elaborate black and white printed design that was put over top. So it's a pretty remarkable piece. This was called the Temple of Honor. And you can see at night it was lit up. So quite incredible. Art from different cultures sort of combined to make this unified whole. Now one thing that was interesting about this one is it didn't have any enclosed spaces. So from that point of view, it was rather different from the others. And I think that in some ways it was less personal, you know. This is 2005. And by this point, they'd run out of dinosaurs. So they couldn't use any more of that material because the factory, I think, closed down or something. So this is all custom made. And you can see here this guy is working away on the wiring. And these are all the pieces that they put in. It's an unbelievably complex operation. Each of those pieces is staged in a specific location. And then the cranes come in and then they have the minimum distance to put in place, right, to install those components. There's another piece. That was from the first level. You couldn't walk on this level. I went up during construction. So the year after that, I do seem to have mixed up the sequence a bit here. Anyway, this is Sagrada, Basura Sagrada by Shrine and Tuk Tuk. So David did the first few temples, but after a while he did find it pretty exhausting because the amount of emotional energy, not to mention logistical energy in building one of these things is pretty incredible. In fact, after the first temple, he joked that he was going to open a comedy club next year. But this is a different crew, and this is all rubbish, right? The whole point of this temple, hence the name Basura, is this is all scrap material. So the framework, I think for structural reasons, they had to use solid timber, but the rest of it was all kind of junk and found material, and all of these little chandelier things that hang down here, these are all cut from tins. So this is all scrap. And I remember standing here during this gusting wind, and you can hear this clanking sound of all these tins. That's a shot taken during construction. You can see all the big cranes they have with the bright lights, because they have to work during the night. Because one thing about Burning Man is it's so bloody hot, right? So quite often people work late into the night because it's not as hot. But then about 2 in the morning, it gets just bone-chillingly cold, so you have time to stop for a while. This is a lovely shot during sunrise, and I was enjoying the beauty of the temple and the pictures I was getting and having a lovely time. And then I went back and found someone stolen my bicycle. So sometimes, you get the beauty and the ugliness of human experience all combined in one. This one is called Fire Fires by David Omlas and Marilee, drawing a blank, sorry Marilee, I don't remember your surname. This was very, very difficult because of weather. These are all thin wedges to represent the flames. And when they were constructing it, they had massive dust storms for about a week. And they couldn't actually put these in position, because once they're in position, they're very sturdy. But up until then, they would whip wildly around in the wind. And so eventually, the on-site crane operators came up with a very elaborate plan. They had to use 2 or 3 different cranes at once and pin down all the pieces to make sure they didn't move. So these guys were shattered at the end of this piece. All of these are laser-cut pictures around the bottom representing different continents, art of different continents. And it's called Fire Fires because they had a plexiglass tube, that's Perspex in the UK, with a fire tornado. They actually had propane burners at the bottom that would generate this flame that would just go up in a spiral. It's really cool. You can see these people admiring the flames. More of those troublesome pieces of wood. And there's the flame. You don't really get a sense of it there, but it actually kind of moves like this whirling dervish. This is the Temple of Flux, the Flux Foundation, put this one together. This was very interesting because they deliberately decided not to make it look like a building. It was one of the first ones which was designed to represent natural forms. So they were inspired by dunes. So these are all pieces of wood that were nailed together over an A-frame structure. But you'd think this was a sort of a, if you made a movie set and you wanted to make a sand dune, you would build something like this and then put sand on top of it, So it was quite striking. Another interesting thing about this one is all of the interior space represented little chapels or meditation spaces for people. There were little tiny openings, and you could go inside into the private area and just meditate. And it was quite lovely. That's a fun one. I was coming back one night with some friends, and of course it was in the middle of a horrible dust storm. And so we decided to kind of hunker down in the temple. I think it was after the man burn. And we just kind of went, oh God, this sucks. What are we doing? You know, hate this dust. And then I turned around, and it's like, oh, you know, these beautiful shafts of crimson light. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And I thought, I've got my long lens on the camera. I need a wide-angle lens to get this shot. So I had to change my lens in the middle of a dust storm to get this bloody picture. But I think you'll agree it was worth it, because it really looks like some, I don't know, computer graphic logo at the beginning of a movie for some production company or something. It doesn't look real, you know? But it was actually incredible to walk around there, and, because this is just a flat image, but to see the actual beams of light as they radiated out and you moved around the sculpture was just astounding. As you can see, here are some notes and things that people have started leaving on the building. This was fun. I went up on a crane for this, obviously. I'm not capable of unassisted flight. So I'm up in this wobbly crane, and it's like, you know, swaying like this, which is a little bit disconcerting. And then I saw the crowd jostling and just waiting to get in to go close to the flame, right? Because they have the safety perimeter all the way around here during natural burn to keep people from getting injured. And I thought, what if I took a long exposure during the movement? So the moment the rangers dropped the safety perimeter, I opened the shutter, and this is the 25 or 30 second exposure. These are all the people with their little lights and things walking towards the flame. And I was amazed it actually turned out, because, you know, as I said, the whole thing was wobbling, so it's a pretty long exposure there. This is the Temple of Transition, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong. By the International Arts Mega Crew. There was an American, an Irish person, and a Kiwi who were on this team, who headed up this team. This was the biggest of the temples up until that point. I believe they were claiming that this is the largest freestanding wooden structure in the world or something, because it has no foundation. It's just plonked onto the earth. But even though it's just sitting there, it's such dense clay that you don't have to worry so much about foundations. And it's made of multiple towers with interjoining kind of walkways and lots of areas for private kind of space for meditation. And have a look at this bit here. This is quite interesting. This little table thing here. I'll talk about that in a sec. So there's a nice shot just at the end of construction. Each of the towers had a name, but I'm afraid I can't remember what they were. So that's how it looked like when it was finished. Quite lovely. This was another epic struggle. This was so huge and so much work that they were completely broken at the end of it. They had to have, you know, years of therapy to get over this. So I would be worrying you a bit here. You know, I know you can do it. You're strong. But it is hard work making one of these things. And a lot of times people who work on these will also spend a lot of time with the people at the event. One thing that David Best always does is he walks around, partly because he's just still in go mode. You'll see him like picking bits of wood up, and his wife will be like, "David, come on, it's finished. You can stop now." And he's like, "Oh, I better." But he's also, as I said, this kind of secular spiritual figure, and so for many of the temples, he would say, you know, imagine, for example, the second temple. Imagine a suicide. Imagine a small child who died early. That's who this building is for, if you will. Later times, he wasn't so specific, but he still draws a lot of value from all the interactions he gets with people. There's looking up at the tower. I don't know if you can quite see them. No. So this central tower had these gongs, and this was actually Indonesian gamelan with computer-controlled hardware. So each of these has a little electric trigger, and it played music on regular intervals, and it would come from all around you. So you could lie back on the ground and you could hear the chimes and gongs from all around. Oh, out of sequence here. I don't think I have a good picture of this, unfortunately. So that kind of wooden structure at the very front, what happened was they strung wires from there to the central temple, and it became the world's biggest harp. And so they had musical performances where they would have these guys, and I think it's the women too, plucking all these huge strings, right? And then they amplify them, and the whole building would resonate. It's called the Earth Harp. It's quite amazing. There's David, obviously at the end of a temple build. And this is Temple of Juno, I think. Juno? Okay. Thanks, Jones. And here's some of the crew. He's worked with the same people many times over the years. But it's an amazing amount of work, as you can see. There's a lot of heavy equipment that's required alongside all of the manual nail guns and so on. There's a nice crane shot. You know, that's another one I was talking with a fellow photographer, Scott London. So if you've seen an identical looking shot to this, that's credited to Scott London, it's because we had the same crane at the same time. So I was just chatting with them, and I was kind of keeping an eye on the crane there. It was just parked. And I saw a guy, this is pretty dark, I can see a guy walking towards the crane. I'm like, hey, Scott, crane. Because I knew that they would be driving the crane back to the main depot. So we dashed over there and said, hey, are you driving back to the depot? And he's like, yeah. Like, can you take us up? Take a shot. So, I mean, having been there many, many years, you get to know all the crane operators and all the drivers, and they themselves are artists in their own right. They help make these things real. Some of the wonderful detail work. This is another David Best piece. And there's a volunteer working away. So, Temple of Juno. This is what it looked like before the people went in. And I think there might be a shot. Okay, you can just sort of see here all the things that people left on the fence. There's a shot of the burn. This is the Temple of Holiness by Lightning Clearwater and, oh dear, this is terrible. Greg Fleischman, and there's a third person. That's it. Thank you. So, this one was quite interesting because it builds on architect Greg Fleischman's work on sculptures that don't, or structures that don't use fasteners, these metal fasteners. All of these pieces are slotted together, so there's not a single screw, a nail, a staple anywhere in there. The whole thing is made out of wood. So it's absolutely astounding. So this is obviously during construction. And these are actually complex things he calls nodes, which have multiple triangles, and all the pieces slot together and bear weight downwards in a very structured way. These things here are actually steps. So during construction, they can go up and down like ladders. But they took the lower level of steps out so that they didn't want people climbing up there and falling off and dying in horrible ways. So the top level was accessible, but not the lower. This is a shot that I took from about the second level. And there's a beautiful polished granite Inuktitut. It's modeled after an Inuit type sculpture. And it was left inside. So the idea was that when the building collapsed, the stones would be left standing despite the flames all around. And it worked. One of the arms broke off, but it did actually stand afterwards. So this one I had to climb quite high, as you can see, to get up there, which is a little bit scary because I had, a tripod and 2 cameras and 5 lenses and a lot of equipment. But it's one of those things, you go up there and you're sitting up there looking around, your heart's slowing down a bit, and you think, why do I come here year after year? And you look at the sculpture a building like this, you think, oh yeah, now I remember. There's somebody working on the piece. And that one was kind of a fun shot, which was in the book. Unfortunately, it's not. This one, I attached a camera to the top piece. It's like a pyramid on an Egyptian pyramid, right? They would stick this pyramid piece on the top. So that's like that. And that's a radio-controlled camera that I stuck on the top so you can see the crew ready to receive it. So this is one corner, and then the crane is going to swing it around and drop it in place. So that's kind of a fun shot because there's no way you can get this piece, this view, without a radio camera. And another use of radio camera, I put a camera inside it. Because if you were to be inside it during the burn, you would be joining all of the memories of the temple, right? I mean, it's unbelievably hot. Just standing hundreds of meters away, the flames are incredible. And so I put this remote control camera in there. This little platform here, there's a couple of those, actually contain diesel because they use it as an accelerant to speed up the burn. Because if it takes too long, then all the pieces wouldn't burn, and then you're left with this very dangerous structure that someone might walk near and it would collapse on them. So they want these pieces to burn rapidly, and then the whole thing will fall down into a nice, safe bonfire, basically. So these are these are remote triggers here. There's wires for each of those. And on the outside, they had fireworks and things. So that was quite fun. I had this little sled, and I had the camera on a remote, and taking all these pictures, and I kind of pulled it back on a steel cable. And the box was so hot. It was basically an ammo box, a military ammo box, where I put a little glass window on the front using heat-resistant glass. It was so hot I couldn't pick it up. Just amazing. And this is David Best here. This is Dave Best, not David. There's two people named Dave and David Best. This guy does the pyro for a lot of these works. So this is Temple of, help me somebody. This is David Best again. This is 2014. Grace, Temple of Grace. So this, you can see, it's only been open for a little while, but already people are adding their own stuff to it, right? They're adding their own memorabilia, their own notes, and so on. And this was beautifully constructed with chandelier. Each of these rings was under tension. They had a wire cable running through them, and it was deliberately ratcheted, right? And then, this was the cool bit, when the whole structure fell, it spun like a screw into the ground. Brilliant. And they were so pleased that it worked, because you don't know, right? You make these things, and you don't know if it's going to work or not. But yeah, the whole thing just sort of spiraled into the ground very, very gracefully. My last shot. So that's a little brief overview of the temples of Burning Man. And I hope that gives a sense, if you haven't been to Burning Man, of what this is about. That in the middle of this big party in the desert, in the middle of this celebration of art in the desert, there's also a space for personal reflection. And the temples have just become this really unusual event for kind of a festival. And I think that's one of the reasons why the organizers don't want to think of it as just a festival, because people think, festivals, parties, drugs, running around, listening to music. That's fine, but you can get that anywhere, right? You don't have to go to the middle of a horrible desert where it's really too hot during the day to experience that. But where else can you experience something like that? So, as Yam said, unfortunately, I'm not going to be at this year's burn, sadly, which would have been great. This would be my 20th year. But I know that you're going to do an unbelievable job with the temple. We're really looking forward to seeing pictures of it. So, thanks for coming out, and over to you, Jans.
Hi, cheers, Neil. We've got two or three other items on the cards tonight. The first is the auction stuff, and we've got prints and, well, we've got pieces of art. 3D pieces of art, genuine pieces that's fabricated or 3D printed rather Would they be bigger than that, or is that the normal size?
They'll be bigger.
They'll be bigger. So you have smaller sizes of pieces of the actual temple dotted around that we are going to be auctioning off. We also have, as modelled by Neil, we also have the last copy of the book, Neil's book, but also, while he was doing his talk, Neil, hang on to this. He's going to be signing that and be signing all the other copies. But I noticed that Arthur was wearing this beautiful little pendant thing, which is modelled on the temple. So I thought, what the hell? He can get another one. So we're going to be adding that to the book. So the book and this, and yes, and we'll be going. So yeah, and also a Q&A with both of the guys. I'll be asking a few questions, but also you'll be able to ask a few questions. I have a very special one for Arthur. I don't know, should we go into the Q&A straight now?
Yeah.
Are you cool with that? Okay. It's just something that's been on my mind since I met. We met about 2 weeks ago, not far from here. And having worked with quite a few of the temple crew and the man crew and all the others, I just kind of wondered, what does it feel like to know that you're going to be constructing something that more than 70,000 people are going to put their hopes, their dreams, their sorrows, their wishes, their loves. How does it feel, and how does that affect? How does that? Because I mean, David Best walks around. I mean, what does it mean to you?
It's funny. There's this obviously incredible pressure, incredible sort of weight, but at the same time, it's so joyful. There is something so incredibly happy about the fact that you can be part of something like this. I know the temple is about sadness, it's about loss, but it's also about release and kind of letting go of your grief. And strangely enough, there's something actually fairly happy about that. There's something that is fairly deep and that just kind of removes that stress away. And I mean, when you build things, you gotta deal with stress. I mean, it's, you know, especially when you work on projects that you are not entirely sure what's the outcome. Like very often when you kind of take on a project, you just don't know. Like you just don't know if it's going to stand up. You just don't know. You discover things as you go. So if I were to think of the stress, if I were to confront that, I'd collapse. but I don't, and I don't because you know, whatever happens, and in a way that's that kind of trust that something beautiful will happen, whatever it is. You know, we've gone through failure. I've shown you failure, but failure is beautiful. Failure is beautiful, and it's beautiful because it allows you to learn, to grow. And everyone around you grows and learns. And that kind of communal feeling of growth, and that's really my focus. Like the whole stress thing is just not, because that's just the method. It's just one of the tools. You know, stress is here to wake you up in the morning, go to work, and but it's not the end. Like the end is that other feeling. So,
thank you. I've got one for Neil later. So over to the audience. Who's got a question?
This gentleman here.
Do you want to shout? Or do you want to shout?
So, obviously, as an architect, you think about how people are using your buildings, and originally this concept of Galaxia came from the Virgin Galactic concept. Have you thought about how people are going to be using it as a temple? Obviously, as a designer, you know how people interact with that building particularly, do you think that you'll spend a lot of time once you've built the temple watching people use it, or will you be off doing other things?
I'll probably be sleeping. But obviously, I'll just kind of look at it. There's something about the temple where it's not quite about the structure, but it's about the people and how they appropriate the structures. I think one thing I've learned with the tangential dream structure is that every day something new is happening. And I think that's why, NK, like, it's so exciting to be a photograph, because I don't think if you start to graffiti a wall here, you're a criminal, right? Like in Burning Man, you're just doing what the law says, self-expression, radical self-expression. So you're just kind of respecting the law. And so that's so exciting to see what people feel and to express yourself, because there's nowhere else where people just constantly express themselves. And self-expression, that's another one of those guiding principles. So yes, it's incredible to see that a structure is not yours at the end of the day. Yes, of course we're going to burn it, so I'll have to let go. But I've let go already. The team is taking over. The people that are volunteering are kind of working on it without my control. It has a life of its own, just like that little turtle that moved around. Like, I think as a designer, you need to let go. You need to not try and control every single thing, and that's Burning Man is a special place for that. So yeah.
How long before the gates open will you arrive with fly out here?
So it's a good question. We're arriving on the 8th of August, and then we're leaving on the 7th of September. So we're spending a month in the desert.
How long are you going to be in Reno?
Reno, we're going mid-July, so probably, yeah. But the build is starting next week, 1st of April in Reno. Sorry, the week after. Yeah, and we'll be there in Reno. I know some people are from Reno here. So 1st of April, we'll start the first construction. We've already kind of ordered the wood. And we were pressing the engineers to give us some sizes. But that's it. The wood is ordered. We'll start.
What's the best way we can help you achieve this fantastic project?
Such a good question, Phil.
Nice loaded.
Oh, that's perfect. I don't even know him.
I've not met
You do not know this man.
never met this man before.
So, obviously, I mean, the project will cost about $350,000. And we received $100,000. Right? It's partially funded. It's actually not funded. This is a gift. Burning Man says they're the biggest donor, and the rest is the community. The project, the city, Black Rock, is the community. There is an organization, but to be honest, they're just kind of here to help the community. They're not. It's not an overarching thing that controls it. They don't. I was talking to people. It's just like the city is by people. So, just to answer that, sorry. We need your help. There is obviously helping with volunteering. We have a Facebook group, Temple Galaxy have Facebook group. There is like a questionnaire, and then you can all like register, tell your skills. We need availability, we need skills, we need, and then there is obviously spreading the word, saying why it matters to you. You can tell if you've been to Burning Man and you've experienced the temple and you have a story. Tell the story on that page. Tell why it's special for you, and then add the little link to the Click and Pledge donation page, which is a page on which people donate, and then that funds is then transferred back to the temple's accounts. And yeah, and so please help meet this price, because otherwise the temple will either shrink, or I'll get in debt, or I don't know, but we'll find something.
There are a few temples that I know that have been built in the past where the lead people are still in debt. It's never signed, sealed. Well, it's delivered, but it's never quite sealed. And this is to a certain degree a sense of pride for me, because years ago when I went to the desert, I came back and thought there was no representation in the UK. Started a group called Euroburners, started a group called Fired Up. And is Bradshaw here? I am one of the founding members of an event in Spain called Nowhere. There were about 4 of us at the time. So we were going out to Spain almost every month looking for a location. I produced the first 2. And for someone in the UK to actually get that accolade, not the man is secondary. The temple is the place where I have sunk my soul on numerous occasions. This has to be done, and it has to be done properly, which is why we're here. Any other questions?
I have a question for both of you, which is, particularly, you've been Burning Man like for 20 years, and you've been to Burning Man more recently. What's it about Burning Man that you feel that has like made the biggest change to your life that you did for you?
So the question was, what's the biggest change in my life that's come about from Burning Man? I'd say embracing my own creativity and ways of learning about how to be creative. I first heard of Burning Man in 91 actually, because it was the 1990 event, but I first heard of it in spring 91. And it was the back of a magazine called The Whole Earth Review. And there was this picture of this wooden figure burning. And I was like, wow, what is this? This is crazy. This is a huge thing, right? But I couldn't go. I was a student. I was living in Ontario. I didn't have any money. And one of those things, right? 8 years later, 1998, I was living in Vancouver. And I came across somebody's webpage about having gone to the Burning Man thing. I thought, wow, still going. That's amazing, right? So I rented a car, went to the event. I only spent like a day or 2 there because I was a bit scared, I heard all these crazy things about mad people. And at the end of it, I thought, that was cool. That was cool. And then I drove away and I did some other stuff, went to Death Valley, this and that. But over the next year, I found myself going back and looking at the photos that I'd taken. Because I'd taken quite a few pictures, mainly just to show other people, right? My family. What the heck was I doing at this bizarre event? And I thought, I think I need to go again. And I think that part of Burning Man is what captures so many of us. It sort of kicks a little door in your head where you kind of go, that's really cool. I could do that too, right? I may not be able to build. I'm not David Best. I can't build a building like this. But I can contribute my own way. I can experience this in my own way. And when I started working on the book, that was my way of kind of recording and capturing that. And then learning how to take photographs in crazy conditions and, So that for me has been the biggest change in my life, is sort of embracing that side, the looking at things, the serendipity of the event, and then trying to find beauty in those moments when you're out in the desert.
How are you? What you said made me think of. So I had a phone call with Jerry James, who built the First Man. And he's in the team, and he kind of haven't gone back since the 5th Burning Man, maybe. So he went with Larry Harvey, who said, "Oh, it's the summer equinox. We should go to the beach and burn a man. Why don't you build it?" And he's a carpenter and so on. And he went a couple of years, and he's never really been since it became a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, it is a worldwide phenomenon. We're speaking about it. It's like, Arthur, it was just meant to be a barbecue on the beach. And, but when I said that, I realized that actually no one understood or realized the impact it would have. It was beyond everyone. And I remember reading something else about Larry Harvey, who said, well, this is a city that is oriented on the art. The art is the primary thing, and the city is around it. And when you're a bit creative, when you're young and you're quite sensitive, I was quite, and I was always told, the artist, whatever, it's not a future. It's like going to be depressed and blah blah blah. And now there's that city that praises art so much that it's oriented in a sort of croissant Yeah, I'm French, by the way. Around art. So the centerpiece is art, and everyone is an artist. I mean, that's huge when you're kind of artistic minded. It's finally that people see value in creativity. Not only that, but everyone is, whether you're, you're in finance or you're a lawyer or you're going there and you are an artist. And so there's not this separation between he's the math kind, he's the kind of this kind, and we're all there and creative. And for me, that's the biggest thing that I've really enjoyed there, is to empower everyone and to feel that everyone was empowered in a creative way. Yeah.
Okay, Neil, this whole camera thing, taking pictures on the flyer, requires a certain amount of discipline, especially as you switched from film to digital. Where do you stop? When do you know you've taken enough? You've done it 19 years? But I know you went through a ton of images to actually put this package together. But it's just a question. When do you know enough is enough for the year?
When it's over and you have to go home. I took about 65,000 photographs over an 18-year span. So this book is just a subset of those photos. And of course, every time I look at it, I go, oh, but there's this really cool shot that I could have put in, but they didn't have it. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I mean, to me, photography is a bit like, when you're a kid, you have those little games. Maybe kids these days have, computers and stuff because they're modern. But when my age, we had those little games where you have a little cardboard disc with a glass top, and that'd be like a ball bearing with a bunch of little holes, and you have to kind of roll it around to get the ball bearings in the hole. And you kind of have to kind of maneuver it. And that to me is photography. It's about finding that alignment of things that works. And yeah, I mean, it was a job for me for many, many years, basically. I'd get up in the morning before dawn, cycle out to get pictures of the sunrise, keep taking pictures until it got too hot, go back to the tent, kind of take a little nap, and stay up all night taking more pictures. Because so many of the pictures that look the best for me are the night shots, right? And that's when everything comes alive. The city is pretty quiet during the day, but at night it's a whole different universe. And that's one of the things about the book. The structure of the book was suggested by a previous designer on the project. The time of day, right? Morning, afternoon, evening, night. So yeah, I don't know. There's no real answer to that other than you just sheer bloody-mindedness. You just keep going until the event is over and you've got to go home. Although there's one night, usually Wednesday, when I would put my camera down, right? Because it was just too much. Right? I say, okay, Wednesday, I'm going to go out with my friends, we're going to party, we're going to have a good time. And I'd walk around the whole night going, yeah, everything is in a 3:2 aspect ratio.
Any other questions from the crowd? Anything you'd like to know? Yes, please.
What is the key to striking that balance between being there in the moment, experiencing it and traveling, and also documenting it for future enjoyment?
That is a really good question. So the question is, what is that balance between being there and enjoying that moment of Burning Man and then recording it? That isn't easy. And I used to be really paranoid about that. In my first year or two, I'd be like, oh, am I taking too many pictures? Am I not taking this moment in? And I think it really depends on each person, because for me, the taking the pictures was part of the event, right? It was my way of interacting with the event. It's my way of giving back to the event. It's my way of making a record of this, because everything's transient. Everything's gone, right? And the only memory we have is what we have in our heads and what we have in our cameras. So for me, that became part of the event, right? That's how I got to know people. Being a nerd, it's a lot easier to meet people when you've got an excuse, like you've got a camera. So that for me was what was really important. But for other people, I think it would be very disruptive and a real problem. They wouldn't be able to appreciate that moment because they'd be trying to take a picture. and that can get in the way. And there were times when that definitely happened. And I have to say, okay, I'm putting my camera down now. I'm just going to enjoy this moment. So yeah, that is always this tug of war between experiencing Burning Man and recording it. And in fact, the DPW crew, the people who work there, building, setting out all the toilets and the roads and everything, they'll often say to their friends, "Oh, I'm going to Burning Man tonight," even though they're at Burning Man, because what that means is I'm not working tonight, right? I'm not driving a crane. I'm not, doing whatever it is. I'm going to be at Burning Man, and it's important to experience that. Any other questions?
Final one for me. Picking up on what you said, what's the difference between experiencing Burning Man and living through the photographs that you've taken in a year? I mean, this from someone who, my first year at Burning Man, I shot a documentary for the BBC, and I spent the whole week filming, and then I spent a whole year experiencing Burning Man through footage. I didn't believe it was true until I actually saw what I shot.
I don't know. That's a really tricky one for me to answer. I would say that when I see a picture of Burning Man, I can instantly tell that I took it. Because I instantly remember what I was doing when I took that picture. I look at a picture like that. I'm climbing a ladder. Well, that's obvious, right? But I'm on a fire truck that was parked there, and there's a ladder, and I climbed up it. This is just after I was talking to my friend Meredith, who was standing there. Every picture at Burning Man, I can instantly recall what I was doing and what it felt like to be there. And so editing the book was very evocative in that sense, because every time I sat down in front of my computer, it was like a little trip back to the desert with nicer weather conditions. But yeah, it's a really difficult one. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Give me the mic. Neil's going to be signing books. We are going to be having the auction. I have this little beautiful memento here that we're going to be adding to the only book left. We may throw in a few other things. There's lots of art that we are going to be auctioning as well. And don't forget, every single coin goes to the temple. The gentleman that I gave a hug to earlier on was a burner friend, who donated all the alcohol. He, family business, owned Aspel Cider. And so thank you very, very much. And to all the team. Colours. Ooh. So we've got nice shiny things. I know you were like a black one.
So, thanks to all of the volunteers for coming out and helping with this event. It was really, really kind of you, and thanks so much for being here. 5 minutes?
5 more minutes on the auction. 5 minutes break?
Okay.
Yeah, 5 minutes to go. And
cool. We'll do a little bit of paperwork on the auction, and please come back here. Thanks so much.
Okay. We are going to work. We can how many we got? And guys, please, could you we've got some dustbins at the other end, if you can put the bottles in the dustbin. And the temple necklaces are going to be a live auction here. We've got just a few of them, a nice black one, which I gather is coveted, and the others.
everything?
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
It's fine.
Okay, if anyone wants a book signed, I'm just going up to the front because that appears to be the only place I can do it. Hello.
I think Neil has it. Yeah.
Do you need a mic?
Last call for the silent auction. Last call for the silent auction. Okay. Okay.
I'm going to ask you guys to bring all the pieces that we're offering on. Neil, I know you don't drink, but keep an eye on that as well. Please.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And the book. So, yeah. Okay, Santa. I need you okay.
And last week's festival was in the Canada
Okay, we are rounding off the silent auction. If you are interested in getting any of these pieces, please step up, get your name and your price on the piece of paper. And also to say the pieces of tempo, the little miniature pieces that you see around, we are auctioning every single one of those off as well. Yes, they're all included. Yes.
No, I haven't been to any of these events. So I don't know, it just doesn't have really help. It's hard going to the Village Park. So obviously this week we are going to one, so now we're going to go to something like but I don't think I can do it this year. Because of some
We've got cardboard too. Put them there.
Yeah, exactly. But I know.
Let's get these in hand and then we're good. Do we have more? Let's bring it over here. Ron Gandhi, come get your tea. Yes, hold on. That one? Yes, that. I'm going for it. Yeah. The Flaming Lotus girl. And do you want Tammy.
So if you have your name down against any of the pieces, please do gather round. They've started going bit by bit. The sculptures and the necklace pieces, the white ones